Alright, RPG Rules tutorial on status effects number 9, I think. And we're going to have a look at orders and payloads, which are status effects that cause other status effects to happen. So we'll start off by creating an order for Rainbow Guy. And an order is basically a status effect that causes people within a distance of you to have another status effect. So we'll give ourselves, we've got a order effect, we can pop on that. We'll colour it negative because it's going to be purple coloured. And here are the order settings here. So we'll leave the standard radius of 5. We'll make one to begin with that applies not to allies but to enemies. It will apply the flames buff to them, rather than debuff, every 1 second, and the buff will last for 2.5 seconds for anything that leaves the aura. Won't have any conditions on it, line of sight's required, and no extra damage type other than from the flames. And let's pop that now into the violet ray, where we've been doing all our testing, and show you what that does. So turn on the violet ray, and any enemy within me now starts taking damage over time. So if we select this robot, we can see it's got 1 instance of the damage over time buff on him. And when we step out of the aura, that takes about 2 seconds to disappear, and then the visual effect disappears. Go to this one, damage over time. Go and stand between these two. They're both taking damage. So it's quite a powerful effect in some ways. I'm not having to do anything. I can keep using my other powers to do whatever they do. And the aura keeps on ticking. As long as I'm close to them, they take damage over time. Yeah, so you can pretty much put whatever you like in there. You know, that's an example of an enemy buff. You could have allies and have a heal in here, or you know, anyone nearby has a force field, damage shield put on them, that sort of thing. I'll just show you a couple of extra things we can do. Say we put this sleep buff on here. So sleep from the telepathy power set is a hold which has got 1 hit point. You know, it'll put people to sleep, and then they wake up if they take damage. So we'll go to our aura power and make it do sleep instead. 2 enemies. Turn it on, and any enemies we go to fall asleep. Like that. Go and stand over here when this guy, the other robot, approaches. And as soon as we leave, they wake up immediately. I did this, for example, with Morphet with a poisonous gas form, can put people to sleep. But the problem is, you sometimes want them to stay asleep a little bit longer. So what we could do is make the buff duration, say, 10 seconds. And this way, with the sleep aura, I can go near these two here. They fall asleep. This robot is now out of range, but his sleep is still counting down, giving me a chance to do stuff to him. Of course, it's going to make the sleep go away immediately by doing some damage to him. And then the aura should make him fall asleep again. Or do we have to get out of range and then get in close? Yeah, so that's the basic rules with auras. Other cool things you can do with auras. You can have the beam settings, so we'll say these auras, this sleep aura produces a sonic link beam, and that's just an extra visual setting. so that when anyone is nearby and is being put to sleep, we can see that we're keeping them asleep. You know, it creates a beam with whatever settings you want between you and the target. When you get far enough away, the beam disappears. We have an order condition, so you can specify what kind of characters the order affects. You know, whether it only works on robots or doesn't work on robots or only works on the undead, whatever. And that order condition is checked before drawing the beam as well, so that's sort of a useful thing to have there. The one last thing to point out about orders, as we would have seen with the Flames one, they do not affect props. You know, the order basically checks for characters nearby and doesn't have the ability to affect props yet. I might put that in as an option later on. I was a little bit worried about performance with that one. Okay, so that's the auras. We'll now go and make a payload. Status effects, payload. Here we are. And what a payload does is whenever any of your attacks hit, it adds an extra status effect. So we'll make the payload here Flames again, because that's a nice easy one to see. The payload duration, the flames will last for 5 seconds. We won't do any damage for now, so we don't need to worry about that. No special conditions, the payload will last forever. And the payload effect, let's put in a generic shockwave, because they're easy to spot. Those shockwave rings, whenever our payload goes off. And we're going to put that on the violet ray now. So take away the aura, put the violet ray on there. And let's run with that. So turn on the violet ray. Did I give that an icon? The payload. No, I did not. So I'll just quickly give it an icon. I need to fix it up so that these all get their icons automatically. So when we turn on the violet ray, we can see Rainbow Gun says payload 3 fire damage per second for 5 seconds. So if we use any of our powers, that robot's now on, gets the flames for 5 seconds counting down there. If we use the green ray, that gives him, that put him on fire. Actually got put out of fire by going in the swimming pool there. Yellow ray puts him on fire, and so on. Yeah, so it's good if you want to have, say, a character who's, you know, literally on fire and all their attacks do extra fire damage while they're on fire. Having a look at the payload there, we've got a payload condition which is a power condition, so we could limit that to things like it only adds damage to melee attacks, or only adds damage to powers that are psionic, or whatever. We'll talk about that more in the conditions tutorial. We can have a payload that doesn't apply a status effect at all. Just make this none, and get it to do 10 damage of type fire. And for that one it might be appropriate to choose the flames, the generic flames effect. And let's have a look at how that works. So now the payload's just going to do 10 extra fire damage immediately. So if we use the orange ray, yellow ray, that did an extra 10 fire damage. Let's watch that closely. Oh, right, yeah, we need to turn this on. Yep, so with the payload on now we're doing extra fire damage and leaving a little bit of red flame. When we turn the payload off, we're not doing that. Yeah. Damage multiplier just means multiply the base damage that's happening, so that you could have an attack that does double damage. Number of uses. You can have a click power. Say your next attack, if you just have number of uses as 1, will do 10 extra damage, and that's it. The apply condition is basically for determining when the payload happens. Like, you could have a passive power with an apply condition that only works when another toggle is running. An expiry condition, self and target, means you check these conditions against yourself and the target when the payload's delivered to see if the payload's going to wear off. So let's just do a quick example of that. We can have the violet ray power toggle. Turns our payload on. There it is. It has 1 use, so basically it disappears after 1 go. We set that to go on fire and that's it. And then we have to turn this off and turn it back on again to be able to use it again. Subsequent attacks here are not setting anyone on fire. We could also get rid of that and say the expiry condition is dice 50%. Every time it hits, it has a 50% chance of expiring. So turn it on. Use the orange beam. Yep, and it's expired there. We got unlucky straight away. If we try little orange beam, yeah, you can see it disappears 50% of the time after 1 go. We could say make that none, and it's only going to expire if it hits metal targets. So I don't think those robots are metal. Nope, they're not. We can apply flames to them, no worries, but as soon as we use it on this metal box, it expires. So you could have like a taser thing that discharges when you hit a metal character with it. Maybe have it do an explosion that only works on metal characters as an extra payload, something like that. Yeah, so that's sort of how to program the payload a little bit. Apply to allies. That's basically if the payload is like an extra healing or whatever. Requires damage and requires critical are interesting ones. Like we can say this payload will only work, it'll only set things on fire if we do damage to them. So if we look at our red ray, for example, turn the violet ray on, the red ray is currently doing no damage. It's just teleporting us around, so it doesn't set things on fire. This one does do damage, so it does set things on fire. And that damage check means you also have to bypass the target's, any of the target's defenses to do damage. So that's a good one, for example, having a poison dart with a big poison payload on a piercing damage attack. And if the target has reduction against piercing, then the dart isn't even going to penetrate their armor and they won't take any of the big poison hit. And finally we've got the requires critical, which we can tick there. That means that you only get the payload delivered if you do a critical hit. So that's good for sort of flavor type powers, martial arts thing, which gives you a chance to stun on every critical hit you do as a payload and so on. Yep, so that's auras and payloads. Auras basically give you the passive ability to confer statuses to everyone around you. Payloads add extra status effects or extra damage to your attacks while they're active.